Well, hello everyone, and a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Carol Kuzmachka, and I'm a professor in the School of Leadership, Ecology, and Equity, and I have the pleasure of acting or helping facilitate our session today. We'd like to begin, please, with a territorial acknowledgement. Kwe Kakina, hello everyone. Pisha Shig, welcome. We would like to acknowledge that St. Paul University is located on the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. We would like to honor the Anishinaabe people, the first peoples of the lands and waters of the Ottawa River Valley, from time immemorial. We acknowledge that the site of the city of Ottawa serves as the home of the Anishinaabe, as a place for spiritual ceremonies, cultural gatherings, and exchanges among First Peoples. Today, this spirit of peace and friendship is the foundation of relationships among Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples from around the globe. So this series, Being a Leader, Lunchtime Conversations, offers opportunities to reflect with organizational and community leaders around the challenges of social transformation in a complex world, and to better appreciate the resources we can rely on to act within this world. Organized by the School of Leadership, Ecology, and Equity at St. Paul University. So again, welcome, and a few reminders as we begin. This conversation is being recorded and it will be added to our YouTube channel. We'll be sending out the link to you after the event. We invite you not to be passive but active and engaged in your participation today. Please keep your webcam open to help facilitate this if you can. Only the videos of those speaking will be shared. And we invite you to pay attention to the questions and/or reflections that arise for you throughout the conversation. And please don't hesitate, post them in the chat. We will have some time to engage with them following the conversation between Lauren and our invited leader, Louise Sproule. And so I now, with pleasure, invite my colleague, Professor Lauren Levesque, to present our speaker for this afternoon, Louise Sproule, and to begin the conversation.
Thank you so much, Carol. So again, welcome everyone. So we have the pleasure of having with us this afternoon Louise Sproule. Louise is someone that I've gotten to know a bit better over the last little while, but who's been a figure in the community where I grew up for many, many years. So I'll just say a little bit about her bio before we move in to the questions. So as a publisher of The Review, a century-old community paper serving Eastern Ontario, Louise Sproule has had the opportunity to observe decades of development and change. Growing up in the Vankleek Hill, Hawkesbury area, she has always loved local history, photographing local architectural gems, and above all, listening to people's stories. So staying connected to these stories has enabled Louise to contribute as a leader in many ways. And she's been recognized for her leadership with the Lieutenant Governor's Ontario Good Citizenship Award. So thank you so much, Louise, for having this conversation with me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
My pleasure.
All right. So first question. I was reading your bio and you mentioned the idea of listening to people's stories. So before we jump into the conversation about leadership, I wanted to ask you why listening to people's stories is so valuable, and what you've learned over the years from listening, stories, and storytelling.
Um, I wouldn't even know where to start to tell you how much people have told me, but I think that listening is so important because it's surprising what people will tell you. And I think that's something I learned from being a journalist is that if you ask and you have an open sort of not an aura, but if people know that you're open and receptive, they will tell you almost everything. And it's the biggest privilege you can have to listen to somebody's life story because
Mm.
there's so much to learn. Anyway, I mean, sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're sad, but that's where the meaning, that's where life's meaning lies, is in our stories.
Just a quick follow-up question. Would you consider yourself a storyteller in some way, shape, or
Um,
form as well, or more of a
I think
listener?
so. I think as we age, we have more stories behind us than what we're thinking is coming ahead. I have noticed that I have turned into the kind of person that will help a mom in a grocery store or tell someone what to buy to make supper or tell them how what's something that I have done. And everybody says, those are great stories. You should write a book. And I didn't realize I was, telling so many stories, but I think it goes with having listened to a lot because I still, certainly in real estate, I continue to hear so many life stories. It's just unbelievable.
Awesome. So thinking of this idea of stories and storytellers and your own background as a community leader, this is a question that we often ask our guests to define what you understand as leadership, and maybe say a little bit about why leadership is important in rural communities in particular.
Okay. I've spent certainly when I was, running the newspaper, I was often writing editorials about, being the one to step forward, being the one to lead the charge. And sometimes people would say, we're sick of reading about that. Stop telling us what to do. You make it look so easy because I don't really think of myself as a community leader. Um, I think a leader is a person who's not afraid to be at the beginning of the parade. They're not afraid to lead the parade. And that's easily said, but even if you organize a parade, it might happen that no one will show up. So you have to be the kind of person that can rally people to whatever it is that you believe in. And so that's where the listening to people's stories and being kind of a conduit for people's voices. Um, I've often been told, and people here don't know me, but as a child, I was so shy. But as an adult, I turned into this person that everyone would say to me, everybody always listens to you. When you speak, everyone listens. And so that's part of, I did a bit of writing in preparation for this just to sort of think things through. And um, you have to be a person with credibility. You have to be ready to put yourself on the line and you have to listen to what it is that people want, even if you have an intuition. Um, we were talking before this conference started, and we were talking about banjos. So if you try to hold a banjo conference or a banjo, trade show or something in a town where it's full of classical musicians, you're not going to be able to lead that very well. So that's where listening and having a sense of your community comes in, because you sort it all has to come together. Like and I think it was easy for me to get ideas because I had so much information flowing across my desk every week after week after
Right.
week, the history and also the present, what was happening. So
Yeah.
now I forget the question, but
No, it's okay.
wasn't
Um,
listening.
no, just a quick follow-up because I was rereading the notes that you sent me when I sent you the original questions, and you said something really interesting that's linked to leadership. And that was that leadership is sometimes seeing things before others see them. And I thought that was a really fascinating way of articulating what leadership is. So I just wanted to ask you if there's anything you wanted to add to that. What does that mean for you, and what did that look like in
Yeah.
your own experience?
I forgot that I wrote that actually, but but it's so true. It's so many things. It's like, taking on the Higginson Tower, where there was just a ruin. A bunch of us saw what could be, and we decided to give it our best shot. And before you know it, we raised over $300,000 and we did it.
Mhm.
Um, It's organizing things for the first time. It's one of my favoriteest things to do something that people think cannot be possible. And sometimes things don't work out. But more often than not, if you believe in it and you have a really strong sense of what something could look like rejuvenating your town, restoring a historic building. I mean, how many places in Eastern Ontario, have historic ruins been seized upon just by a small group that could actually see it? And even though there are people in it, and small towns are like that. If new people, if you haven't lived here for all of your life, new people take something on, everyone says, well, what do they know? But sometimes the sheer force of will and hard work and sincerity and showing up to do the work, being ready to take on the work, you can do incredible things. I know the Higginson Tower, when we started it, people were not too sure about it, and it really gained momentum. And then there's a little historic church that a community group has taken possession of, and they do art shows there. It's in Dalkeith. Everyone probably knows it. It's the Robertson Clark building. It was a Catholic church. And they invited me to come and speak because there was a group that was interested in pursuing it. They didn't know how to tackle it. And they thought they would, have me come and talk about how we did the Higginson Tower. And so there was a whole table of people. Some of them were very frowning and, not too sure. And at the end of the meeting, they had resolved that, well, the community had built that with their money over the years, and that they should make the church give it back to them for $1. And they did get it given to them, and they are still running. And it's not always easy, but that's a small group in a little town of about, 400 people. So I wrote about and saw so much of that. I think that it was inspiring. And the other thing that I had really wanted to say is, and I say this to all young people getting involved in things, we all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. So there were so many examples of selfless community people that I was writing about and I witnessed. And I thought it kind of gives you the inspiration and belief, well, if they can do it, I can do it. I want to be part of this community. I want to carry on this tradition. In Vankleek Hill, I think we have almost 36 not-for-profit organizations in a town of 1,800 people.
Yeah.
And so I call on all those resources when I get a big idea. So, and most often the answer is yes. I always thank people for saying yes. So.
Great,
anyway.
Thank you. You mentioned that stories would come across your desk. So this is a good lead in to the next question, which was to tell us a bit about the leadership roles that you've had in your community.
Okay. So having a newspaper was like having a very powerful machine. Community newspaper publishers, they used to be described as thought leaders. You have to step outside of your body and say the right thing and do the right thing and find where you believe something should go. But that being said, you have an incredible ability to help. When you see an organization floundering, sometimes, things happen in organizations and there's sometimes people are having a big fight or a disagreement about something. And often people would come in just to talk to me about something that was really going off the rails. And sometimes maybe it was my infinite wisdom, but sometimes just talking it out. And often people would say, I want something in the paper about this. And I would say, well, what do you really want to accomplish? Because airing your grievances, and it's only one side of the story 1 week at a time, maybe there's a way through. And sometimes I think just, I was sort of like an objective party. Sometimes I was able to help people in that way. When people came in with an idea that they wanted to do something, I would often say, here's a plan. Let's do some press releases. Let's have a meeting. Let's have a community. You better contact the municipality, make a presentation, call them all ahead of time. So I'd sort of give them a how-to of how to get something done. And mostly because I'd seen others do it before. It wasn't anything I came up with. But yeah, there's many ways to get things done and help people. And the newspaper is a big machine. I mean, you can advertise it. Something I wrote in my notes last night was, even if something's not true, anybody in this group, you can't repeat this. Even if it's not true, say it anyway until it is true. Years ago, when Vankleek Hill was just starting to get super active with activities, I came up with this idea of doing these full pages with ads from all the businesses. So it looked like they were all supporting it. And then you put the schedule of events in the middle. Well, now you see that in all the papers, but we put a tagline at the bottom that said, there's always something happening in Vankleek Hill, but it wasn't true. because it was a quiet little town. I mean, we had the fair, but it wasn't full of events like it is now. But before you know it, people started saying, "Oh, there's always something happening in Vankleek Hill," and I would just not say a word about it. I mean, now that I'm out of the paper, but people don't remember. I mean, I know that I started writing that. I said, we're going to tell people that this is an amazing little town, and it is, but it wasn't as busy then. I mean, all these, it was before the Festival of Flavors, and
Yeah.
the May show is just starting, all the events that we have. So you can be an influencer, but again, and in my notes I put that you cannot just take that influence for granted, and you can't just get up with it one morning. You have to walk the walk and talk the talk. You have to tell the truth, be honest, be transparent, show up, be responsive to people, and put the time in to earn people's trust. And then you lie to them. No, no, I'm kidding. I didn't mean that.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that, because having grown up attending some of these festivals and events, I mean, it almost feels like they are just organic with, they've always been part of the landscape of Vankleek Hill, so, and Hawkesbury. So that's really interesting. Yeah. Would you say that the idea of showing up and having that sense of optimism and holding that vision, that if it's not something that we have now, that we're just going to lie to everyone that it's happening regardless.
Yeah, and I made a joke about lying because we have that saying in the newspaper world that the only reason we print corrections is to make you think everything else was true. But yeah, but I think that's really the heart of what a leader will do, is they can see something magic ahead, and you transfer it to everybody else. And I mean, like I said, I must have picked that up along the way, but one of those aha moments, if you will. I hate that expression, but we were starting out with the Higginson Tower. No one knew about it yet. We had just had a lunch meeting, 5 of us, and I gathered 18 people that I thought were credible, honest, hardworking, trusted people in the community, fairly well known, but not celebrities or anything. And we made a big list of all kinds of local businesses. I had ahead of time, actually, and then we added more. And I met with them at the review, and I said that I wanted each of them, all I wanted them to do was go and talk to people about our project. But if along the way you could, convince people to give $500, we were going to start these cobblestones. I mean, this is all out of the air. Our 5 people, we just invented this. And there were 18 people at that meeting. I had called 19 people. And when I was on the phone, one of them said no. The only time that anybody's ever said no to me, unless they were on a vacation. But anyway, they came, but I said, my thing was that I said, and I had been reading a lot about, possibilities and imagining things, and imagining things that you want to make happen. And I said, if anyone here, I want you to imagine, I took a moment, I know this sounds sort of a little bit out there, but I said, I want you to imagine coming around the hill. You've just come off the 417, you're coming up to the intersection, and over there on the right is the Higginson Tower. And I just left it there. And I said, if you can't see it, you can go home right now. But if you see it, if you think we can do it, then stay. And I forget, 24,000 from just those 18 people, talking to lawyers and their contractors and their roofers. And that was the impetus to get the first thing going. And that's my other big takeaway from the Higginson Tower, which was a big project. I was, holding the bag for a lot of the fundraising, was that, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Like if you had told me we needed 300,000, I mean, this is, 20, 25 years ago. But
do you think we could maybe stop at a...
Okay, I would just ask everyone if you haven't muted your microphones, if you could mute them, that would be wonderful. Thank you. So this is a follow-up question in some regards. You've talked a bit about what it was like to have a community newspaper kind of indirectly. But I wanted to know, along with what it looked like to run a local newspaper, maybe you could say a little bit about why these institutions are so important, like local organizations and institutions are so important for local communities, or in smaller rural locales in particular.
Yeah. So much I could say about that. I told myself I'd try not to make my answers too long. But I think that especially today, we have so many ways to communicate with each other and so many threads, but a sense of belonging makes you feel happy, safe, optimistic, eager, enthusiastic, positive. Just life is good. And if you take our community, I mean, before I was in real estate, people would write a letter to the editor more than or personally and say, I moved here because there was a newspaper here,
Oh,
because
really?
they have been closing across the country. Or they'd say, I came to the townwide yard sale and I told my husband we have to move to this town because that's the best economic development thing. That was another idea that a friend had, and she and I did it. And everybody said, well, how are you going to get everybody to have a yard sale the same day? Well, those of you that live in the area know that it's for 25 years, like it's all hell breaks loose in our little town. And I've told other communities how to do it. But um, people want to belong, and certainly in real estate they say, well, we want to live in Vankleek Hill, we hear so many good things about it. um, it's your belonging, and I think, you take places like Orleans, or not to throw Orleans under the bus, but when you have sort of a nondescript, more anonymous type of life environment, you kind of lose your bearings. Nobody's happier because they've spent 4 hours on Facebook, but they are happier when they've gone to a music festival or a live music event or a book reading or even the townwide yard sale, with a big bag slung over their shoulder. I mean, that's happiness is, to me, happiness is meaning, and serving. Like, that's the other thing I put in my notes. Everybody says, oh, you give so much to the community. Like, it's selfish. Like, I do a lot of real estate. It's quite lucrative, and I feel great when I'm doing it, but I'm up to my eyeballs right now in home tour and people saying we can't wait. And that's, my heart is there organizing community events. It's the people and welcoming people, and Fiber Frolic. That's how Lauren and I have gotten to know each other better, is we both love textiles and fibers. And this event was sort of, as it had been handed off to someone, and I've taken it and grown it. And it's my favorite event because, those are my people too, all these people that love to knit. But that's, my other takeaway for community leadership is lead something that you love, find something that you love, even if it's banjos, like find something you love, and you will find your people. My other little weird story is I was on vacation just in Ontario, had this dream that Max Keeping, he used to be on CGOH, announced on the air that there would be 100 homemade pies for sale in Vankleek Hill. And I just woke up with that. And it was so real, because my dreams always seem so real. I thought, we're going to sell pies at the food festival and make money for our merchant association. So I assembled a list and I divided it. I got 10 people to call 10 people. And there were so many great pie bakers. I mean, this is a rural area. And we did sell 100 pies, and people were there ahead of time. I mean, I'm going to try to demonstrate. If this is the pie, people were holding their hand over the pie they wanted. We were sold out. We opened at 9. We were sold out by 10. So we made a quick $1,000. So that's just an idea. It didn't exist. And I know the Merchant Association said, people you can't get people, you can't make 100 pies. I said, well, no, but we'll find people to do it. And I always do this when I have a weird idea, or an idea that people say is weird. I say, it's no work for anybody else. I'll do it all. And of course I get people to help me, but it's when people tell me that something won't work, well, then I know I have to do it to make it work. So and have fun. It is fun. Yeah.
Well, I think you've mentioned a couple of not for this to become an advertisement for Vankleek Hill, but you mentioned the yard sale. That's the trash and treasure. Is that trash?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm trying to think of what you mentioned, the Festival of Flavors, and
we have Porch
losing
Fest.
track, Porch Fest, and then
Fest.
the Fiber. Yeah.
Fiber Frolic is, it used to be, 5 or 6 vendors, I think, when it started. And now I rent the top floor of the community center. We have about 21 vendors. I've got a wait list, so I need a bigger place. And then there's the Christmas home tour the first
Right,
Saturday
the
in
home
November.
tours that you had mentioned as well.
Yeah, and there's
And
lots, and there's a garden show. I always tell people, we're 1 hour away from 5 million people, but we still have, turkey dinners at the church hall. We still have an agricultural fair. And I'm on the fair board, and I worked at the gate. I love to hear what people are coming to see. And I was just saying at the last meeting, like, who knew that many people want to see sheep shearing? But apparently every year it's one of the most popular things. So we sort of have that homegrown, homespun kind of safety where you can almost enjoy the simple life as we kind of imagine it in our minds.
yeah,
But, we have a local tavern with a steak night and a trivia night. We have a horticultural society with meetings every month. You can be a friend of the library. We have a not-for-profit art gallery. We have a nature society. We're real. It's amazing. And I just think like one thing feeds another. Many people are members of several things. So it just, I often, a lot of people say, oh, Hawkesbury, it's a town near Vankleek Hill, about, 6 kilometers away, 10 kilometers away, 6 miles, with 11,800 people. And they don't have anywhere near the volunteer, you know, um, involvement that we do when you compare like populations. So sometimes it just gets too big. Even
yeah.
and I think also the other thing about being a community leader is to be fearless. Like, don't be afraid. Even Trash and Treasure, we organized it, we advertised it, I put ads in the review. What's the old man worth? Find out at Trash and Treasure, put him out. We did really kind of fun advertising, get rid of his chair, the overstuffed, chair that looks so awful. And we imagine this. I mean, when I think back, I think, what was I thinking? But we advertised it, made flyers, advertised in Hudson, Hawkesbury, Alexandria, but we didn't know if people were going to do it. Like, what if I was so stressed out the week before. I thought, what if nobody does it? And I got up that morning, looked out my front door, and across the street, this big vehicle had come with one of these machines that's going to put paving in somebody's driveway. And I thought, oh, it's just going to be another Saturday. Like, this is going to be a flop. Anyway, within half an hour, it's like everybody's front doors up and down the street open, and all this stuff started coming outside. And there was so much traffic on the street that the guy with the paving and the floater truck or whatever they call it, he had to leave. Like, he could not. And it was just crazy. And we never looked back. But that's like a leap of faith. We saw something, didn't know if it was going to happen, but it did. It just, people responded.
It sounds like a lot of these events started as these ideas that you didn't necessarily know that it was going to work out, but from what I'm hearing, it's just right. You just did it anyways, which is kind of interesting.
And I just did want to say that community leadership, I mean, events is maybe something I did to raise funds and create, a sense of community and to have fun. But it's also about, showing up when you need to, when, at council meetings, if something that you don't like is happening. It's about the philosophy of life. And certainly as a newspaper publisher, writing editorials, maybe about clear cutting that didn't always sit well with everyone. It's about it, that's the part about earning the trust, is about really being true to your ideals. And so that's about being a community leader too, is going to talk at schools about ideas, talking to classes and listening to what they have to say, instead of just, I'm doing it now, like pushing information at you, but it's about leading in a larger sense than now. Maybe I did it more through community events, but even I like to think that I kind of influenced the Hawkesbury Rotary Club. I was the first woman that they allowed in the club, and I think it was an eye opener for them to have a young female business owner there. I think I changed it a bit, and they brought in more women, but it's so long ago that they used to mail out a weekly bulletin, and if you were proposing a member, because you had to be proposed, it's like imagine a men's club, they would put your name on a little slip of paper, and that little loose slip of paper would be in the newsletter in the envelope. And so that would go out for 3 consecutive weeks. And if anyone had any objection or knew any reason why you should not be in the club, maybe you'd robbed a bank or something, all any member had to do was say no. You wouldn't even have to give a reason. But I forget what the purpose of that story was. But see what I mean about the stories? But I'm just saying to break in and, you know, do something new. It, without knowing it, young women have said to me over the years, well, you know, they decided to do something because, well, they knew that I was in the Rotary Club, which had been male since 1926. So anyway.
What advice then would you give? You started to say a little bit about that in answering the last question, but as a leader, what advice would you give those wishing to create a vibrant community? And where would you recommend that they start?
I think the first thing you have to do is you have to show up. You have to give of yourself. I put notes on this, so I'm looking at them, and maybe you have to think about giving selflessly, and discover the joys and rewards that go with giving, and examine your own motives. Like if you're there because you want to run for mayor next year, or if you're there to make, you know, your partner's ex-partner look really bad. You know, if you're there for the wrong reasons, it will not work out. But if you're looking at your community and where it's standing right now, maybe look at growing leaders from within. Look at who's already there and talk to those people, and ask them how they would be willing to help. And look for people with altruism. Look for people with transparent motives. And strengthen and work with local organizations. Organizations are difficult. It's easy to do something by yourself, but if you have to work with 3 people, you have to be nice, you have to listen, you have to compromise. So I think one of the most key things of being a community leader, and again, I have watched people like a hawk to see who leads well, which organizations fall apart, who was the president when everything went west, you know, and the master meeting leaders who are consensus builders. They listen. And sometimes someone will say something offhand, and I know what they meant, but the other person takes offense. It's about sort of collecting all those threads and weaving them into the common cause. You know, I think what they meant was this. And it sounds quite egotistical to think I can do that, but as a leader, you have to take a few risks like that and say, is this what you meant? Or this is what I thought you meant. Is that what you meant? Because they're not hearing it that way. Because we all know about those parking lot meetings. Everybody listens and they shut up and they get really mad. And then they go outside of their car and they talk for 2 hours. So I try to avoid that and sort things out so everybody leaves happy. And then the other thing is, you can do almost anything if it has a purpose and it has meaning. We've all seen this. If something really needs doing, if they're going to, you know, plow Main Street over, the whole town would show up to stand in front of the bulldozer. But if it's just some cockamamie thing that you've thought up, like a banjo festival. No, I keep coming back to the banjo
We're going to
festival.
have to do that.
Now we'll have to do, you'd be surprised how many people like banjos. And so it's really important too, to take inventory and look at what is working in the community, and why is it working or not working. Like I said, I've seen, I guess because I had the privilege of being on the inside, I saw a lot of friction, you know, more than you might know, that never ended up in the paper because we'd try to solve it before, even though there would be, you know, huge waves of gossip going around town about who said what about who. And sometimes my best advice for that type of negativity, and it's been directed at me, sometimes you have an internal struggle or somebody wants to start a parallel group and you think, well, why are they trying to do that? And sometimes you have to, as one community leader, I won't name the person, said, keep your eyes on what you want to accomplish and keep good people around you and just keep moving forward. And it's the best advice I ever had, because you know, you can stew all night, make a mess of your sheets by worrying about what you think or what you've heard that someone is saying about you. And often it's not even true. But
Right.
I always would try to, if there was a level of 3 of negativity or somebody who I felt was trying to undermine me, And I think people do try to undermine people if they perceive they have power. And then I would try to come up with something additive that I could do. Like if they were criticizing, I can't think of anything right now, but I would try to add something to the thing I was working from to make it even better. And it kind of neutralized that negativity. I just find that finding something positive to do seemed to just clear that out, and it minimizes any power that you might think they have. So like if there was an organization trying to start parallel to ours, I would say maybe it's time for a membership drive and an annual meeting and a potluck or something. And before, just forget about that. Let them do, I know that woman, I should have done it and I would have made a fortune, but let them, just let them do that. Mel Robbins, who's so big right now. Anyway, that was too long an answer. I apologize.
No, it's fine. The conversation, I can't believe that we're almost up for our conversation, our time together. I wanted to finish with a question about art. Maybe it's because we keep on talking about banjos. But I wanted to ask you why you feel rural communities need arts and culture, and why arts and culture need rural communities, to finish off our conversation before we open the floor to questions from those who are here.
Well, I haven't done any scientific study in this, but to me, art it's another voice, but artists are usually more fearless. That's where the creative heart is. And often, especially if you get traditional communities, there's a big barrier between artists and the rest of the community. So I think artists, to use a simple turn of phrase, they stir things up, and they too show us what we maybe did not see, whether it's contemporary art or abstract, or even just the buildings around. Like, again, I used to just take pictures of the architecture in Vankleek Hill and put it in the paper and talk about each item. I would get information so I could write intelligently about it. But I felt I was showing that to the residents for the first time, that this is how other people see us. And I think that's what art does. And I think, of course, artists need people wherever they are. And if artists, they're just like anyone, they like a sense of belonging. It's a great thing to do an artistic event in a small community where you can meet the people that are your audience.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, thank you, Louise. Okay. I really enjoyed speaking with you. So I think now I'm going to pass it back to Carol, and then I see that we have a couple of comments in the chat. So we'll open the conversation to the people who have joined us today.
Good. Thank you very much, Lauren, and thank you wholeheartedly, Louise, for what you've offered to us in this conversation. It's an opportunity now for all of us to engage. And we do have 2 interventions that we can begin with. And as we do, I just invite you to think, is there something you might like to ask Louise to elaborate on further? Is there a question that has come up for you, something that's staying with you that perhaps you might like to engage in some interaction? So we have a first question from Mikael, and he comments, leadership being seen as something magic, seeing something magic ahead. I like it. How do we make sure this magic is not just pipe dreams? What do you think, Louise? What would you offer as a response?
I think life is a crapshoot. I think if you're listening, that's where listening to the community comes in. If you're going to take on a $3 million project, it better be more than a pipe dream. Get information and listen to people, and make sure, if it's something other people want to do, then you know that it holds water, that you can go forward.
Thank you, Louise. So we need to do our reality testing ourselves in our leadership. Eva asks, perhaps, Louise, you could tell everyone exactly what the Higginson Tower is.
Oh, that's true. it is it's now that we've done it, everyone uses it sort of as the icon of Vankleek Hill. But it was maybe a 20-foot tall stone ruin in the middle of a forest that you couldn't see. And kids used to go in there and smoke and drink and do stuff like that. But it used to be, it was built around 1825, and they think it's the westernmost French-built stone tower because all of the measurements are in metric. And then it had a top portion put on the top with a windmill, because it was supposed to be a grist-powered windmill. All of the information that we could gather, and it was by one of the local reputable families. The Higginsons did so much in Hawkesbury and Vankleek Hill, but it was a ruin for decades. So we thought, well, let's restore this, not put the windmill back on top, but rebuild the tower as it was remembered by most people, and at least in their minds. So we started. Now it's open in the summers to tourists. There's steps you can go up to the top. It's the highest point in Vankleek Hill, and we had the top wooden portion of the tower. It's now covered with tin, but we had it built by, now I can't even remember their name, but they have rebuilt Fort Henry. So they built the wooden pieces of this big cylinder, and then they took it apart and then numbered all the pieces, and then they brought it to the site, reassembled it, and then they were supposed to like stack it, just like a on one on top of the other. Well, we had read that the grist-powered windmill never worked because there wasn't enough wind. And we had to cancel this installation twice. We had the big crane and everything. It was too windy. So we had to laugh. But anyway, we did manage to restore it. Incredible community support. So it's a tourism site. We got the township to agree to take ownership of the property, which was donated by Phil Arbor. He gave the property to the municipality. And then the municipality had to trust the 5 of us that we were going to take on the restoration, restore it, and carry on with it. So there was some trust right there. We were sitting looking at those 8 counselors. How did they know we were going to do what we said we were? But they gave us $25,000 and said, good luck. So,
what a great example. Thank you, Louise. We have a question from James. Just before we move to that, I want to interject one that came up for me while we were listening to you. You say that leaders need to be fearless. And I wonder, what's your best advice to us about how to cultivate fearlessness in our leadership?
How to cultivate fearlessness. Well, you have to think about what's the worst thing that can happen. Maybe park your ego. Plan well. Get some good minds around you. And fear isn't going to make anything good happen. So it's kind of like bringing a flute to a banjo festival. It's not needed on the journey whatsoever. So what good is it? It's I used to be fearful of public speaking, and my chair making a funny noise. I used to be. You can be afraid of everything, but you can just tell yourself that you're going to put that away for a while and keep on going.
That's very wise insight. Thank you, Louise. And here James is asking, how can we address the challenge of adapting small town and community life to a younger generation and to an increasingly more diverse range of residents in our communities? What insight can you offer, Louise?
I think that small town communities have always had a certain amount of change. But as James says, and James, I'll have to say, he is the one that purchased my newspaper, so he's in the hot seat these days. But it's going to take a bit of a stretch. A lot of new residents have moved to rural areas during the pandemic. And I used to write lots of editorials, even 25, 30 years ago, about city mouse, country mouse. People are coming here. Locals will say, well, you're not from here. And so everybody's going to have to move a little bit to the center. New people are going to have to realize that the older residents want to hang on to their traditions and their feeling about the community, which is in fact changing a little bit every day, even if they don't see it. And so if we don't have new people moving into our communities, they will just wither up and die, because a lot of the young people are leaving. However, remote work has made more things possible. So I think everyone has to think about what will our town look like, and no strategic studies and no reports. I've had enough of those for a lifetime. But we need to think about what do we want our small town to look like? Like years ago, I remember thinking, if only Vankleek Hill had a coffee shop like in the city, one with the machine that made like latte. Like, how come we can't have that? Well, now we have two, and that's a good thing. Coffee's always a good thing, but I can't even believe that there was a time where we didn't have one coffee shop with, I think some of these, and what I feel from the young people that talk to me, they have ideas. They are moving here and they're getting away from the city and they have little entrepreneurial things they want to do. Maybe they will rejuvenate our main streets with their ideas and what they want for young families, young professionals, workspaces. They maybe will be the artists of our tomorrows.
Wonderful response. Anyone else? Is there something you heard Louise mention during her conversation with Lauren that's staying with you that you would like to take away with you today, you might like to mention? Or again, is there a question that has arisen for anyone you'd like to ask Louise to respond to? We'll just give another moment in case there's something else brewing among us. All right. Thank you, everyone, for that engagement. And of course, thank you to Louise and Lauren for a very rich conversation that brought some wonderful, rich insight about leadership to the surface for all of us to benefit from. Most grateful. And over to you, Lauren, to conclude our session.
Thank you, Carol. I just wanted to maybe I was going to jump in like one final very small question that I realized
do.
I skipped
Sorry for
over.
winding down so quickly.
No,
please do.
But Louise, I wanted to ask, you mentioned that we share a love of textiles and how we
Yeah.
And I wanted to just ask you very, very quickly, because I know you're an avid knitter, and Louise and I had the pleasure of going with Louise to a local a textile show earlier in the summer, and I just wanted to ask if there's anything in particular that you've learned from the practice of making, whether it's with textiles or anything else, as we think about winding up the conversation.
A couple of things. Years ago, before, like in another life, I always say to people, I used to knit and design sweaters and sell them at craft shows. And obviously, my takeaway from that was I love to do it. I could do it. I could make anything. But I really feel sad that the value of that type of work has been lost to us. And I think it's reflective of, the fact that people think a $10 dress from Temu or Temu or whatever you call it, that's a really good thing you did if you got a dress for $10. I think in the next, maybe it'll be after I'm long gone, but I think we need a giant reset in our values, because online shopping and that type of thing is not helping our small communities. And I'm not saying everyone can afford to buy a garment worth hundreds of dollars, but there are so many young people that want to learn how to do those things again. Yeah. And to me, that's the thread, pardon me, from the past that will carry on. And even at the review, I've had, people would find out that I was a knitter, and they'd say, is there any chance I could just come in? You could help me make a heel. So I'd be in the front, I'd drop my editorial and I'd be in there. Okay, you just do it like this. And I love it, but you can't earn a living at that, or maybe I wasn't able to find the way. So I feel like that's a societal thing. And I have so many other big ideas I want to do, like, St. Jacobs is known for quilts, and I think I've shared this with Lauren. There's so much textile that is wasted. I wanted to start a co-op and teach young women, especially, or people that have sort of fallen off they've lost their sense of meaning, but we could be making like braided rugs or beautiful things and have a thriving industry and people coming to our town just to see these rainbow colored rugs or whatever, we could be repurposing all this fabric, which is, we just have to transport it. But anyway, it's something that I have yet to kind of fully shape, but I think there's an idea there. But anyway.
Thank you. I already told Louise that I'm on board with that if it starts to take shape. So I thank you, Louise, for answering that final question.
Okay.
So I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I want to thank my colleagues who. Carol for facilitating the conversation, and Gabrielle, who's been our behind the scenes tech person. So at the School of Leadership, Ecology, and Equity, we have lots of amazing programs. We have an MA, we have a BA opening in fall 2026. So I think there in the chat, the information has been shared with you. So please, if you have any interest in what we've talked about today in terms of leadership, how it links up with equity and diversity, and also how it helps to shape our larger environmental concerns and what we can do about it from a social transformation perspective, please feel free to click on the links. My colleague Mikhail just had to leave the conversation, but as profs, we're always happy to answer your questions or queries. So I'll finish with, we'll have another Being a Leader session with my colleague Bianca in November. So stay tuned for more information about that. And again, I hope you guys have an amazing end to the day. And thank you again, Louise, for your time and for the words of wisdom about the magic of what leadership can do for our community.
Well, thank you for listening to my stories.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.